Where is the wise man? Where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Get down! Baltimore!
What are they giving?
Everything out of me. They gonna get a Super Bowl out of me. Believe that. Believe that.
All right, welcome on back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown podcast. It is Friday, September 16th, and I am joined by a good friend of the show, a good friend in general. It is Dan Oyefusi, formerly of the Baltimore Sun, currently with the Miami Herald down there, Miami chilling, Mr. 305 himself. Dan, how's it going, my friend?
I'm doing all right. I'm Mr. 305 right now, but I'm 410 at heart, so I'm glad to be talking about you.
There we go. So yeah, Dan, tell the good listeners, obviously your football story, how you came into it, how you from Maryland, obviously, like you said, and got to where you are.
Yeah. So like I said, born and raised in Maryland, right outside Towson. Went to Towson High School, University of Maryland. I grew up watching the Ravens, watching the Orioles a little bit. They haven't been too good, but they're turning things around, it looks like. And always just interested in sports writing. So like I said, I went to the University of Maryland, and after that, I was blessed enough to, right after graduation, to be able to come back home, come to the Baltimore Sun, where I covered the Ravens and a little bit of Terps for 2 years. Started 2019 Lamar's MVP season, and then the 2020 season. Then after that, I came down to Miami right before the start of the 2021 season. So I'm in the middle of my fourth season covering the NFL, second season covering the Dolphins, and I'm just so excited for this game coming up.
Definitely, and a very exciting Dolphins team, and it was really interesting, I guess, to kind of dive right on into it. Last year, we had you on to talk about that Thursday night game, and it felt like that was such a dueling dichotomy between a team that was atop of the AFC, charging forward despite a lot of injuries in Baltimore, and then a Dolphins team that had severely underperformed relative to expectations. And then it got Freaky Friday on a Thursday. Things turned upside down. The Dolphins absolutely just bamboozled the Ravens for really 4 quarters, especially defensively to the Ravens offense. And that game ultimately ends up being a little bit of an impasse for the Ravens. And then the Dolphins go on a pretty mighty run and get themselves into playoff contention. So just wanted to talk about how that sparked Miami's run and what you saw, obviously, covering the Ravens, being, from Maryland, from Baltimore, all of those things, and what you ended up seeing after that game and how it kind of impacted both teams' seasons from that point forward.
Yeah, so I'll start on the Dolphins side, where at that point they were 2-7. They had just broken a 7-game losing streak the week before by beating the Texans, where they did start to kind of sow the seeds of that cover zero, those cover zero looks that they just really overwhelmed Lamar Jackson with. But it seemed like something just kind of clicked at that point. They really turned up the aggressiveness. They started to blitz a lot more. They got some really efficient and just clean play from Tua Tagovailoa after he missed some games and even missed part of that Ravens game. And then I think that they were also helped by, a second half schedule that wasn't, that was pretty light to put it nicely, to put it, bluntly, when you're facing, Zach Wilson and, Mike Glennon and Ian Book. I mean, the margin for error really widens, and credit to them, they took advantage of it. Conversely, I was able to watch a lot of Ravens games last year just because they were playing so many primetime games, and sometimes like a lot of the games didn't conflict. But I think you saw a situation where they just weren't able to make like the key adjustments. Not only from a coaching point, but I don't think they really had the personnel to do that. I think that it just became too much after a while. I think that obviously Lamar going down was probably was really the breaking point, because they didn't win a game after that. But just even losing Marlon Humphrey and the way that the secondary was broken down, the injuries along the offensive line, and I mean, they just weren't able to play quote unquote Raven football. Maybe talk about that for so long, but they just literally didn't have the personnel and the guys to do it. And for as much as you can scheme and coach things up, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to the players, and the Ravens just didn't have it by the end of the season.
Most definitely. And so many successful coaches, especially at the highest level, will echo that exact same sentiment. Ultimately, it is on the players to go win games. It is on them to go execute. That's why they get paid more than the coaches do frankly, as well. But you're absolutely right. Obviously, the Ravens then crumble a little bit all the way through, missed the playoffs for the first time. Lamar, I want to say in the Lamar era, but obviously they probably would have snuck in still if he was still healthy. So skipping forward to the offseason, I guess, you covered the Ravens. You started right into your professional career, right? Really, as Lamar took off in his professional career, I guess. So obviously the big offseason topic, Lamar's contract. I know people are a little tired of hearing it, but I just really want to hear your perspective because I feel like you have a fresh perspective and now you're a little bit outside, but still inside at the same time.
Yeah, man, it's crazy to really think that we're still talking about this because I remember in like 2020, 2021, end of the 2020 season where, the narrative was like, yeah, like we're gonna John Harbaugh. I remember writing the story. Like John Harbaugh was like, we're gonna pick up his 5th-year option. The year before Patrick Mahomes got his deal, Josh Allen was getting his deal, and it's like, all right, Lamar's next. And you fast forward a year, 2 years later, and it's like, what's going on? I think there's a lot of dynamics playing. We know Lamar is a unique individual, not only as a player, but just in the way like he's conducted his kind of career. I mean, you look back to him not having an agent or any representation for the combine, and just kind of the nuances there. It's clear that the lack of representation is playing somewhat of a factor. I mean, I talk to people all the time, like just kind of casually with people, and I'm like, I just find it kind of weird that like Lamar is sitting in like a room with Eric DaCosta, and, all the capologists, and they're like going back and forth. Like I just like don't have I just have a hard time believing that. At the same time, I have a hard time believing like his mom was like sitting down next to him, and they're like, "No, look, I want this much money in the 50." Like it's just kind of weird.
It seems like cartoonish, like to think.
Yeah, it's like I mean, and obviously there's players, other players in the NFL that have negotiated their own contract, but not on a deal of this magnitude,
and not a quarterback.
Exactly, and it's clear that it's been reported that he's seeking. I mean, it's reported that he's seeking a fully guaranteed contract. I think he's well within his right to do that. Maybe partly because of the contract that Deshaun Watson get, but also just because of the impact and his value to not only this offense but this entire team. But I think the Ravens are well within their right as well to say, hey, Deshaun Watson's contract was an aberration. If you look at Kyler Murray, if you look at Russell Wilson, I mean, they got 165 million guaranteed. Like, let's try to get you around that. From a third party kind of outside perspective, I would hope that they can kind of come to some type of agreement and just find some type of way to make it work. I mean, there's all this talk about people are talking about tagging and trading Lamar. Like, come on, like, let's be real. I would be like shocked. I'd I'd flip out in my seat if I woke up one day and I saw that the Ravens traded Lamar Jackson, because that's just not what you do. But again, from an outsider's perspective, and kind of again from an outsider's perspective with inside knowledge,
one foot in, one foot out, a little bit,
exactly,
a little of both.
Yeah, I would hope that after the season, however it ends, Super Bowl win, Super Bowl loss, whatever it is, making the playoffs, however the season ends, I would hope that they can kind of come back to each other, work something out, because Lamar isn't just so important and valuable to the organization. I mean, he's so important to the city of Baltimore.
Definitely. And I think that a lot of kids from actual Baltimore resonate with him so much more than they really have any quarterback or any, offensive player even.
Really any player, yeah.
Exactly. So it's definitely a different impact. The fact that he puts, asses in the seats, the jersey sales, ticket sales, everything. Everybody wants to go see such a dynamic and exciting player. So, well summarized there, my friend. I guess switching gears, wanted to talk about the McDaniel experience and what it has been with such a quirky guy that you've been in front of and covering and all of these things. And obviously that's kind of the big deal this offseason for the Dolphins. They make some big moves. They bring in Tyreek Hill, huge move. They bring in Teron Armstead, a couple more draft picks, in the later rounds, things of that nature. But feels like despite making some pretty powerful moves like Tyreek Hill, he's really the one that has drawn the eye, the attention, and through his quirkiness. So just wanted to ask what this offseason was like and covering the Dolphins in general, and Hill coming in, pressure on Tua, all that coming into this season.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll tell you, it was a hectic offseason. I mean, you start with the day after the regular season ends. I wake up to a notification that Brian Flores was fired, and
even that too. I almost forgot about that situation.
Exactly, right? And I don't think too many people really expected that after the way that they finished the season, winning 8 of their last 9 games. I mean, they finished with over 500 for the second consecutive season. That was the first time in years that they had done that. So nobody had really seen that coming. And then you go back to a couple of weeks after that with his racial discrimination lawsuit, and then obviously the hiring of Mike McDaniel, which really laid the foundation for an offseason where they really wanted to build up the speed, across the team. And obviously that results in them trading for Tyreek Hill, getting Teron Armstead, getting Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert, and even Cedric Wilson Jr. I mean, he's all about speed. He's all about getting his guys in space to work after the catch and whatnot. But, off the field, kind of covering him. He is definitely a quirky guy. He's very self-deprecating. You have to stay on your toes in the interview room, because you just never know when he's going to drop a one-liner. Kind of, he just has a funny way about him. But he's himself, and I think that it's kind of brought a refreshing dynamic where Tua said it a couple of days ago, like he's not a yeller, he's not a screamer, he's not really like denigrating you and getting on you if you make a mistake. He's really about a collaborative approach and trying to get the best out of his players. But he's himself, and I think that's the thing that players really respect. The fact that he is a little quirky, he's maybe an acquired taste, but he's himself, and it rubs off well on the rest of the guys.
Definitely. I feel like he goes into his press conferences, just from lightly watching, wherever I see one, Twitter, wherever. It feels like his goal is to make the media laugh more than anything.
When you ask him a question, you can see the engines kind of churning in his brain, and he's thinking of something clever and witty. And he
tries to think of these euphemisms, and sometimes it's like a screw and a hammer. It doesn't quite work together, but you see what he's doing. So definitely a very interesting guy. Tyreek Hill sets the world on fire with a bunch of comments and talking about Patrick Mahomes, all those kinds of things. But I guess just kind of bringing it forward to the season. What are your takeaways from the first win against the Patriots? And I would really especially ask, what is an overreaction versus what is something that is practical, that can go strengths, weaknesses? What is solid takeaways versus things that you think are overblown?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably an overreaction is I'll kind of flip it and go to the defense, where they limited the Patriots to 7 points, got 3 turnovers, which included a defensive score, and I think that there's a lot of hype around this defense, and deservedly so, because they sought out continuity. I mean, they finished last year as one of the season's best units. They kept all their 11 starters, and then some. They kept the defensive coordinator, so there's definitely a lot of talk that this could be like a top 10 unit. But I almost want to kind of pump the brakes on that individual season opener, because I think that Patriots are just going to be like garbage this year. I don't think they're going to be very good. I do think that this could be like a top half of the league ranked unit. But they're going to be tested this weekend. They're going to be tested by Josh Allen next week, Joe Burrow the week after that. They have a December slate where they play the Chargers and the Packers and the Bills. They're going to be tested. And I don't know if they're that good, limiting a team to 7 to 10 points and causing 3 takeaways, 3 turnovers a game. But I do think they are going to be pretty good. And like Mike McDaniel said, this is the defensive team until proven otherwise. I think something kind of practical is that, what we saw from the offense, give or take, maybe what we see on a week-to-week basis. So during the offseason, we saw all these 50 to 60-yard bombs to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and we just saw them throwing it all over the place. And it's that was cool and all. I kind of wanted to pump some of the. I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer during the summer, during the offseason, during training camp, when everyone's really hyped for the team. But I'm almost
all 32 teams. The quarterback looks the best. Everybody's got the speed. Everything's great.
But you always like to put everything in context, and I thought that in some cases, we weren't looking at things with proper context. The Dolphins had a lot of backup cornerbacks in there. Xavier Howard wasn't practicing. Byron Jones has been out since his offseason surgery. It's. Summer training camp kind of naturally favors the offense. So it's all the 50-yard downfield passes. I was all right, we might see that from time to time in the regular season, but they're not going to turn to the Kansas City Chiefs. So this is definitely an offense where I said before, where they want to get these guys the ball in space. I mean, it doesn't mean it's going to be 20 yards downfield. I mean, half of Tyreek Hill's targets in the week 1 came between 10 yards down the field. His average depth of target, was 9, which kind of matched with what it was in his last season with the Chiefs. So I think it's going to be a very efficient offense. And I also do think that, and I've been saying it for a while, I mean, McDaniel has this reputation for being a run game expert and run game guru, just because that's what
he loves the run game. He's so proud to be from the Shanahan tree and all of that.
But he's not bound to that at all. I mean, they had 33 passes for Tua, many more dropbacks. They didn't run the ball well. I don't think they're going to be that great of a running team this year, because I still do think that, there are some young guys who maybe aren't there yet. I mean, they're going to be a passing team. And when you get Tyreek Hill, when you get Jalen Waddle, you don't get those guys to hand it off 30 to 35 times a game. So I think that we are going to see. I mean, I've said I did predictions where I said I think Tua is going to throw for 4,000 plus yards, which has only been done by 2 other Dolphins quarterbacks. I mean, he's going to put up numbers because when you get guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I mean, you don't do that to run the ball all the time.
Definitely. And I guess just on a little side note, like I keep making this connection in my brain between, and obviously McDaniel coming from the 49ers has to do with it, but I feel like Tua is so similar to Jimmy Garoppolo in so many ways. And what he's underrated at is getting his star players the ball. Like he understands I need to put the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands. Is he a little bit more of a quick, underneath guy at times? Absolutely. But, not the most, he doesn't have the most zip on throwing outs and things like that. So I think it's really interesting that he kind of has that quarterback as he comes to Miami in Tua ultimately. So I just wanted to kind of, I guess, staying on the defensive side of the ball, you said something and a lot of people said, oh, Brian Flores is gone, so it's going to be a different defense. And I think that was a very improper way of setting expectations. Boyer does remain. Boyer is a really respected defensive mind. And wouldn't be, if Brian Flores didn't bring him in, didn't remain with him for some time as well. So, pardon me. How do you expect the Ravens to kind of avoid that similar sloppy struggle that they had offensively? Obviously, injuries factor in a little bit, but how do you think that the Ravens end up dealing with the Dolphins a little bit more efficiently and effectively, or not ultimately in this matchup?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I wasn't able to. I did ask Josh Boyer about kind of his thought process behind, like how the difficulties behind game planning for a second meeting with the team. Like if you've played them, if you played them for the second time in the season, or if you played them like recently last season, and he was like, hey, we have to keep some element of surprise. We have to, switch it up a little bit, but, we still want to do what we do best and put our players to succeed. Now, given that, when you look back at that game, the second question I wasn't able to get in, which I'm really curious, is like, how much did that short week kind of play into both sides' preparation? So it's like, all right, you only have 2 real days of prep. How much are you just kind of focusing on one specific game plan and you're just kind of like throwing that at the wall? So we're going to focus on that, and opposed to with the Ravens side, like how much was it like, all right, we don't have enough time to really like scour all the film.
And it was a 2-7 team at the point when they played.
They were 2-7, and they hadn't blitz. And Lamar did say that like the Dolphins hadn't. I mean, I don't think any team has done cover 0 like that. But the Dolphins weren't really relying on that nearly as much as they did, entering that game. So obviously, I think that it starts up front. I mean, I think that they're obviously, it started with the run game, which has long been the engine of this team. So the Dolphins were able to crowd the line of scrimmage. They did something really unique where they moved their inside linebacker Jerome Baker to the edge, and they were able to kind of use his speed to kind of neutralize maybe some of their read options, some of the speed option stuff that the Ravens like to do. And then when they got them behind and down in distance, I mean, they went to cover 0, and they kind of dared Lamar to beat him with his arm and to make the proper checks, and they just weren't able to. I think that even Josh Boyer mentioned that, hey, the Ravens had some good counters, especially with some of those sideline throws. I don't know if this is a game where you want to play in like a bunch of 11 personnel and then kind of get more of that speed on the field, because there's a lot of team. They have really great team speed on Miami side, but you don't want to play it in a phone booth. And when I was watching that game, it felt like it was literally played like within like a 2x2 foot kind of box.
Very tight between the numbers. Everything was very, very tight. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, maybe like limit some of those condensed formations, but maybe you can take advantage of whether it's 12 personnel or some two tight end sets. I think this is a game where guys have to step up. I mean, you mentioned it, you have to beat man downfield, and I think that there may be some opportunities on Sunday because Byron Jones isn't in the game. Xavier Howard, it's tough to get on him, but Nick Needham was targeted a lot against the Patriots. He did give up some passes. They're going to have some young guys and a drafted rookie that's probably going to play some snaps in the slot. Guys are going to have to win. Guys are going to have to win their battles one-on-one some type of way.
Definitely. I think you bring up a really interesting point of the fact that it was a short week, and it feels like Boyer and Flores probably like, all right, we are in a fight or flight situation. We're 2-7. What if we just use this same kind of pressure front like most of the game in all the high leverage situations? We have a day or two to really kind of hone in on that, get ready to execute that. And that's what we're going to do and then stick to it. I think that simplifies things on a short week for sure. So I did want to ask you, I have one more serious question, and then one I just wanted to ask about your return to the 4-1-0. So Miami wins this game if blank, and they lose this game if blank.
Miami wins this game if they can keep the Ravens offense behind, down in distance, and if they can block in the interior of the line. There's a lot of questions about the availability of the two starting tackles, Teron Armstead and Austin Jackson. I think Teron Armstead will play. Austin Jackson hasn't practiced yet, so I feel like it's kind of unlikely he plays. But they're going to have their hands full in the interior with Michael Pierce and Justin Madubuike. It looks like Travis Jones might be coming back. So they're going to need to definitely, if they get the pressure up into his face, I mean, it's going to be tough. He's not going to step into these passes and whatnot. He can move side to side and kind of scramble out. But you really want to get that pressure in his face because he's a shorter quarterback. He's not going to just kind of like let it loose. And again, conversely, I mean, I think it starts up front where I think the Dolphins' defensive front has a real advantage against the Ravens' offensive line. So if you get them in those 2nd and 8, 2nd and 10, and then you get them to 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, they're going to sit on those routes. They're going to show those cover zero looks. And, like you said, I don't think they're going to do it to the extent that they did. I know Jonah Schaefer, my OB partner at the Sun, said that they showed cover zero on 31 of his 50 dropbacks. I don't know if we're going to see that. But if they get into these 3rd and 8 situations, yeah, for sure they're going to bring that out.
Definitely, they're going to want to show it in high leverage situations, I feel like, and try and see if it works. All right, let's go back to it. They didn't have the answer. If not, then okay, they probably expect the Ravens to play much better against those looks and be prepared for them the second time around. So with that, I do want to get your prediction for this game, but I wanted to ask you first, you're coming back to the 410. What is the first meal? Maybe it's your mom's cooking, but first thing you want to eat after your mom's cooking? I know you love your mom's cooking, so that might be number one.
Yeah, I was going to say
that. What are you like, man? I'm jonesing for, whatever it is.
So the crazy thing is, I've been put in charge of media dinner plans. Like we usually when we go out on the road, the Miami media, we go out and we eat. So everyone was kind of like getting on me. And I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, like yeah, I know some spots, but I don't know like upscale. I just got out of college. I haven't really been eating in the upscale dining places, so I had to look up some spots. I actually got some nice recommendations. So we're gonna go to Charleston. I think it's Harbor East. But I don't know in terms of like what would I want, like probably some crab cakes. But the thing is, like during COVID, my mom learned how to make crab cakes. So I don't even go out to eat crab cakes. So I'm gonna be a glutton. I'm gonna just be eating in my mom's house all weekend.
Love it.
But I'm excited.
Absolutely love it. I'm sure you're super pumped. But wanted to get your prediction. How do you think this one pans out?
Man, you better have people in my mentions. So we did game by game predictions at the Herald about a week ago, and about a week ago I picked the Ravens to win this game by like 1 or 2 points. I thought that Ronnie Stanley, Marcus Peters, J.K. Dobbins, I thought all those guys would be back by now. It looks like maybe J.K. will be able to play, Marcus Peters maybe, but Ronnie definitely not. Just given some of the injuries in the secondary and the advantage that I think the Dolphins have up front in terms of their defensive line versus the Ravens offensive line. I think that allows them to make one more play in a hostile environment. I'm going with the Dolphins 24-23. I feel like if I pick the Ravens, everyone would say I'm a homer, but now everyone's going to flip it on me and say, oh, now you've been in Miami too long, you're going with the Dolphins. But I think it's going to be
Mr. 305, not Mr. 410 anymore. But you're just being unbiased, my friend.
They're not going to claim me in the city anymore. But yeah, I'm going with the Dolphins by 1 point.
I feel you. I think I'm going to go a similar route as well, to be honest. So, Dan, I appreciate you so much. You guys can find Dan on Twitter at Daniel Oyefusi, Oyefusi. And you can find him.
You had the U.
Yep.
I'm excited. I'm excited to hear that, man. Like when I get to BWI and then
we went to Rita Caldwell's party. I told you last night, Rita and Glenn Clark of 105.7 and the Glenn Clark Radio, and they were Avenue. You're gonna get to hear all of it, man.
It's the greatest accent in the world, man.
You're gonna get it all. So I'm pumped for you to be back. Hope you have an awesome time, Dan. Thank you so much. I know you got a flight to catch. I appreciate you coming on this morning, and have a great weekend, man. Hit me up. Let's get together if you got a little chance.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it anytime.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dan.